Hi, this is Mary Morrissey. I just want to tell you how thrilled I am to be with you for the next 60 or 75 minutes. And Michelle, I can hear stuff coming from your side of the computer, so I'm going to have you mute that. So let's start here. Hi, I'm Mary Morrissey. I am really glad to be able to use this kind of technology to be able to sit down with you for an hour or 75 minutes and share some really, really important things around how you can choose consciously to invent the future you would love. I started studying the principles that govern how visible things come into form, how some people live successful lives and some people live lives of relative struggle after struggle after struggle. And they were all good people. And I began to realize it had nothing to do, success had nothing to do with being a good person. It had nothing to do with luck. It had nothing to do with coincidence, although things might appear to be coincidental. It has it has to do with things that cannot be seen with the five senses. And you came today because there's something in you that is ready for more fun, more life, more success. So let's invent your future, okay? I'm really excited to be on the call with you. I'm looking forward to this. Put a lot of planning into it. I've got a nice PowerPoint for you, but let's take a deep breath of life. This is your day. You'll never get this day again. Not once in eternity will you or I ever get this day again. So as we take a deep breath, I would encourage you to get out some paper and have a place where you can document some notes and some ideas for yourself, because ideas, maybe you've heard this term, light bulb moments. So we're going to have some light bulb moments, and you want to capture those on paper. Thomas Edison, known as the greatest inventor to have ever lived, he knew some things. So we're going to be drawing from some of his wisdom today in this call around inventing your future. So imagine if you were to think about just breathing another 365 days. So it will be 27th of April, 2014. You will have a life. Not maybe, absolutely. You will be able to measure that life in your health, in the quality and the depth of your relationships, in the fulfillment you have in the creative endeavors of the work you're doing in the world, and in your time and money freedom. You will have a life. Now, most people live a life by default. They don't consciously invent a future they would love to live or have an understanding about how to allow and harmonize with that life so that it literally materializes in the land of time and space. Well, that's what we're going to learn how to do today. At the end, we have something very, very special for you. It's a gift for you. And so I want to just start with, let's do just a quiet moment where I would encourage you to write down the most important thing you would love to bring into your life over this next year. The most important thing you would like to bring into your life over this next year. Now let's bring that into what we would call a full spectrum, where there's your health. You would like dynamic health. That's the one part of visioning and future planning that we all want the same thing. We would all love dynamic, wondrous, vibrant health. What would you love in your relationships? Maybe there's new colleagues you'd love to work with, or maybe there's more time with your family, or maybe creative family, or someone special in your life, or heal a relationship or deepen one. How about your vocation? Have you always wanted to write that book, or start that business, or close that business and travel, or grow the garden, start the daycare, volunteer? What would you love to do with your time and talent? And what would you love to do if you had the time and the money freedom to do what you really wanted to do, go where you really wanted to go, and maybe even more importantly, give what you really wanted to give? So we begin to think about these things as we invent our future, because today we're going to learn how to dispel our uncertainty so that we don't spend our next year just thinking about it, planning for it, waiting for this one thing to happen before we can go forward. We're going to dispel uncertainty. We're going to claim our own confidence so that we can understand how to take the steps that are ours to take. And I'm going to show you in some very simple ways how you can open up and simply allow more flow in your life, more prosperity, more fun, more liveness. Would that be okay? That's why we're here. All right. The computer I'm using to talk to you and share with you and share a PowerPoint, be able to look you in the eye, runs by an operating system. I happen to use an Apple computer. And so the operating system that this computer uses today is called Mountain Lion. Years ago, its first operating system was called Panther, I believe. And then they came out with Tiger. Tiger was a more evolved operating system. Same computer, but now I had more memory. Now I had more speed of processing. I had much more power with the new operating system. 500 years ago, think about maybe 100,000 years of human history on our planet. And just 500 years ago, the world operated by this operating system. If you sail too far out to the edge, you are going to fall off the earth. And it was logical, and you could see it. With your 5 senses, you could look out in that ocean and it drops off. And even those who are bold enough to say, I believe that we're on something round, not flat, and the others would say, well, so what? Because if you got out, or if it's round and you got out over the edge, you're still going to fall. Particularly if you got to the bottom, you're going to fall off. Because they didn't understand something that was invisible to the 5 senses, and that's something we now call the law of gravity. We count on gravity every day. You got up somehow today, and your feet stuck to the ground. You weren't worried about it. You didn't pray that your feet would stick to the ground. You work with that invisible law. And by means of that, there is everything that brings to you is now possible for you. Just 100 years ago, these guys, Orville Wright, they believed that we really could put humans on heavy machines and fly them through the air, that there were invisible laws that would govern that freedom. And they built this first airplane, December 1903. They flew for 13 seconds. And there were friends and those around him who were going, 13 seconds, that's not very much. And they were going, 13 seconds, my gosh. And before that day was over, they flew 56 seconds. All progress is often made with someone bold enough to have a vision, someone who says, I'm going to invent for myself, for others, a way of being, a way of opening to the possibilities that matter to me. And so the Wright brothers built the first airplane, rode on the first airplane. You and I take flying for granted today. That's just 100 years ago in 100,000-year human history. Imagine what might be seeking to be invented by you. I'm not talking perhaps about a world-changing invention. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about the way you live, about your family, about work that as you do your daily practice of living and breathing and loving and living and creating, that there's a deep down, a growing sense of fulfillment and happiness, rightness with yourself, difference making, and freedom. So, question is, what is the life that you would love to invent for you that would make a difference for you, those you know, because by means of your living that life, you would be free. And that gives you the freedom then to go and do and give what you would love. All right? All right, we're in a spiral universe. So this spiral universe, in that spiral universe, everything is seeking an upward pull of becomingness. The little blade of grass will press through cement, seeking the light, and that same life energy in this expanding, evolving universe. There's a pull of becomingness in every single one of us. It's what pulls the tree to the green growing edge of itself. Where life presses forth. So a year from now, what will you have allowed to come forth? That's what we're visioning today. Would you love more romance? Would you love some friends? How about more money? How about more travel? Would you love to travel? And if you would love to travel, where would you love to go specifically? Now, this was my vision picture number maybe 20 years ago. I had, 30 years ago, I dreamed of going to India. I wanted to I wanted to go to India. I wanted to go to the Taj Mahal. I wanted particularly to go to that lotus chapel that you see there. It's a Baha'i temple. The Baha'is believe that every one of us is a flower in the garden of life. And they have different altars inside, 7 to the major religions of our world, 1 altar to all the lesser known religions, and 1 altar to all the religions yet to come. And I dreamed of going there. And how I invented that future operated by invisible laws that I discovered along a lot of study, some wonderful mentoring by others, my elders, who had studied this much longer than I had. And I decided that the most important thing in my life was to share these understandings. And I have been devoting the last 35 years of my life to helping individuals all over the world discover the capacity and the power that each one of us has to invent a future that we love living. And when you think of the word invent, we're going to take that word and we're going to go through the 6 different letters, I-N-V-E-N-T. And we're going to consider what that really means to invent, all right? But for some of you, this is really your big passion. You want, Michelle and Matt, people are telling us that the connection isn't good. I would say to you, if you can hear me, if your connection is bad, log out and log back in. It's almost always on the user side of the computer, because we can tell from our broadcast and we can tell from our tech person at Omnovia that our broadcast is going out okay. So, and you can hear well, Lillian. Thank you for that. And your connection is perfect, Jean. Thank you. Okay, that helps. And Gina says, I don't see Mary, only pictures. All right. So I'm going to say, if it isn't perfect for you, log out, log back in, and it should work just fine. All right. So for some of you, I just took a group of 44 people to Bali on a pilgrimage. And while we were there, we were introduced to a Swiss doctor who has devoted his life to providing medical services for the poorest of the poor in Bali. And so as a group of people, we decided to generate a contribution. And we heard that for $15,000, he could build a whole new clinic in a whole new area of Bali. So in an hour when we sat there and we just contributed, we generated $10,000. And now since I've come home, we've generated the other 5. So we were able, as a group of people, to make a decision to generate $15,000 to build that new clinic in Bali. Now, we don't live in Bali, but we visited Bali and we left something because we were able to do that. Now, not one of us who gave money to that could have been free enough to do that, let alone go to Bali, if we hadn't been willing to learn some things about how to allow the life that's in us to generate that freedom. And that's what I want to show you how to do. Your brain is a living magnet. You have a right hemisphere, you have a left hemisphere. One is your imaginative center and one is your literal center. So when you imagine something, if you don't write it down, you only activate half of the brain power that you have. Thomas Edison said, I never met a piece of paper I didn't like. Every idea that came to me, I wrote down, and I would circle the ideas that had the most electricity to them. So as you think about your future and you think about a possible future, you'll notice that some of the ideas that you generate have a lot of electricity to them, because you have had a lot of longing for that result in your life. I would really love to travel, or I would really love to do work that matters to me. I would really love that New York Times bestseller, or there's no limit to the dreams or the visions or the future that might be yours to invent. But what will happen is the minute you consider yourself living at a freer state, right behind that will come what's called your paradigm, which is your belief about yourself. Your belief is very much like a thermostat, and it governs how much positive energy you can allow in your life. Your thermostat in your house governs the temperature. If the temperature varies up a few degrees, cool air will kick in. If it varies down a few degrees, warm air will kick in. So you set the thermostat, you don't even really think about it. I went to bed last night in our house, and the thermostat was set. And I mean, only if the temperature outside or something really changes do we change that thermostat. Your self-image is a thermostat. So the way that we can allow for more is what we're going to get into here today. So again, I'm going to encourage you to be sure you are taking notes, all right? So invent. So Thomas Edison, the major, most important, considered, and the most successful inventor to have ever lived. I want to share something about what he said. Because as we start with the I, and we're going to give you an acronym for invent. Because to invent means to bring forth not just an idea of something that has never been before, but to have the prototype of it working. Until you have the prototype of it working, it isn't really an invention. It's just an idea. All inventions start with ideas, but only when they're translated into their visible, workable equivalents, meaning that here it is in the world. Now you've invented it. And that's what Thomas Edison was a master at. And he understood invisible laws. He understood that for everything visible, there is its invisible component. It started as an idea. So we're going to take this I-N-V-E-N-T, and we're going to unpack how you can take an idea right into its visible, measurable, material result, because that's really what you want. You don't want to just have an idea of your future. You want to experience that future. You want to invent that future. And that is a process. And when you understand how the process works and the capacities you have to draw from the infinite side of your nature, everything gets easy. Now, I can say this today, but there were years and years and years where I had an awareness of this, but I didn't have the experience of it. I understood prosperity principles, I thought. I had read a lot about prosperity, but my life did not reflect that. I had struggles economically. I had struggles producing a result in my career that I wanted to produce. And I could say all the right words, but I couldn't translate that. I didn't understand what was missing that would translate that understanding into its visible equivalent. So that I didn't just talk about success, but I had the success. And that's why I reached out to you today. Because many of you have read a lot of books. Many of you have gone to seminars, you've bought programs, you've done all kinds of things. And yet it's almost as if the life you have is either locked in cement or there's little tiny variable changes, but not really the freedom, not really the release that, if you were really honest with yourself, is what you really want. So let's just lean into this and let this be yours today, okay? I had to realize at one point that I had something called the I know that syndrome, that I would hear something and I would go, yeah, I know that. And then over a period of struggle, a significant period of struggle, I realized one day, I don't really know something until my life shows it. So I might know about it, but I only know it when it's strong enough in its vibratory frequency that the molecules of the universe reflect it back to me. So if you and I go to a movie today and we sit in a movie chair and we watch a movie, the movie on the screen is a reflection of what's being broadcast in the projection booth. Now, it can be a drama, it can be a thriller, it can be a romance, an adventure, but it's a reflection of what's being broadcast through the projector. The only difference between the movie house and you and me is at the end of the day, in the movie house, the projector is turned off. As long as you and I are breathing, the projector, the light, is pouring through our system, moving right through our self-image, right through what we're imaging, and amplified by what we believe about ourselves. So today, when we are learning how to dispel doubt and gain confidence and allow prosperity, we're going to change some things about what's moving through our projector, because the only thing life can give back to us is a reflection of the major dominant broadcast of the frequency we're in. It's the same thing with your television. If in the room where I am, there's a television where I watch videos and people send me things, and I use that as a screen for watching something I want to see. I can turn on the television. It's actually hooked to the cable that we have. Now, what will come on the picture isn't what I want when I first turn it on, unless I tune to that frequency. If the last time it was on CNN, all CNN pictures are going to be showing to me, not because Discovery or Home and Garden or Romance isn't available. It's that I'm not tuned to the frequency of the result I say I want. But with a TV, we're smart enough to pick up a remote control and just change the tuner. Changing our tuner requires another whole order of understanding, expertise, and support, frankly. So that's why I'm giving you the time today. I'm going to give you everything I can give you in this hour. I'm going to give you a gift at the end. And if you take notes and you even do some of the little things that we talk about today, things will change. You go down life's highway, you just make a 1 degree shift. You go 6 months down the road, you're in a whole new place. You're in a whole new place. All right, so the I. There is an infinite intelligence everywhere present. Wallace Wattles, who wrote the book, The Science of Getting Rich in 1910, his words for this were, and you can find it in philosophy and religions, and there is Edison, Einstein. There's one presence, one power, one life. Give it different names. Some call it God. Some have different names for it. Everything is of one energy that is invisible to the five senses. It is infinite, and it is intelligence itself, wise. There's not one question that you could ask the mind you think with for which there's not an answer. When you go to the internet on your computer, and you go to the Google box, and if that question you ask, immediately the search engines go looking for everything like what you've asked. And you'll get pretty crummy information unless you're very specific. I was in a small beach town one time with my sister, wanted to go to a movie, and there was no movie in that town, but 10 miles away there was a movie theater, and I knew that town's name was Seaside. I typed into the Google box movie theaters in Seaside. You know how many seasides in the world there are? There was Seaside, Australia, and Seaside, England, and they were all over the place because I wasn't specific in what I wanted to receive. So one of the things you'll learn as you go through this invention process is if you say to the infinite intelligence, I want a happy life, and I want a house that makes me happy, and I want relationships that make me happy. As powerful as the life-breathing you is, it cannot give you that. Because what makes you happy, or me happy, or Sam happy, or Sarah happy, will be different pictures. So this infinite intelligence is both infinite, intelligent. Wallace Wattles said there is a thinking stuff that penetrates, permeates, and fills the inner spaces of this universe. A thought impressed in this thinking substance can produce that very result in your life. So we're going to talk today about how you impress into this infinite intelligence a particular image of what you want to invent, what you want to bring forth. And you must use a faculty that you have called your imagination. So you must create an image. Nobody can create your image of what you would love, but you. Now others can, and what I do with individuals, I help pull it out of them. We do a 2-day training twice a year. It's a public training. It's the only public training that I produce. We spend 2 whole days, and part of the first day is getting just supportive structures to really help people pull out what they would really love. Because this world does not ask you very often what you would love. It asks you, well, what do you think you could do? And in this economy, after all, and there's all this constricted belief that most people live their lives by. So using your imagination to at least try on possible futures. You were really good at this when you were a little kid. I'm going to be a fireman. I'm going to be a ballerina. I'm going to be, and you would try it on. And then most of us, we dialed that down. So I read a piece of research that I think that really, this was by Skip Ross with Carol Carlson. A survey was done to discover the creativity level of individuals at various ages. All the testing, the statistics indicated that 2% of men and women who were in their 40s were highly creative. As they looked at younger people, the results emerged that 2% of 35-year-olds were highly creative, 2% of 30-year-olds were highly creative, and this went down, down, down to 2% when people were 20. But at 7 years old, 10% were highly creative. But at 5, 90% were highly creative. And so the research was, what happens to us that we can be highly creative when we're 5, 90% of us are creative, and by 7, only 10% of us are really creative. And then we turn into just a tiny portion of us. And, you know, if you look at this, 3% of the population in the world, 3%, owns 97% of the wealth. So when we take a look at what it means to be creative, and then we understand the research, what they learned was that along the way between 5 and 7 and 10, as we go to school, we start to doubt ourselves. When we were 5, I'm going to be a fireman. And there was like no doubt in there that you could be and do whatever you wanted to be and do. And then you go to school. And then we start looking outside of ourselves for opinion and approval. And we forget to pay attention to that imagination and what we would love. So we're inventing today because we're going to use our imagination and our intuition to point a direction. You see the tip of that triangle. We're going to write future right there. We're going to invent your future by using our, knowing that we're grounded in an infinite intelligence. You didn't make yourself. You can't breathe yourself. You can't even make your heart beat one time. There's a power of life itself that is in this evolving, expanding universe that's seeking expression in you and as you, in the same way it's seeking expression in the oak tree or in the little blade of grass. Only you have the capacity to be self-reflective, to really consider a future you would love, and then to study and understand how the invisible laws work so that you can work in harmony with them. Up until 100 years ago, when Thomas Alva Edison said in a journal, "I shall discover and deliver for the world a system of illumination that will completely replace our current requirement on oil lamp illumination." He has no idea how to do that. He knows that he has no idea how to do that, but the idea of possibility was so strong in him. And later, that journal and that writing is in the Smithsonian today. Later in Edison's life, he was interviewed by a friend who published the interview. The friend's name was Lloyd Preacher. He was from Atlanta, Georgia. He was an architect, an inventor, and a close personal friend of Edison over the years. In that interview, Edison said, "Don't give me so much credit for the work. The credit is not all mine. I mean only that I am merely the instrument through which a supreme intelligence carries on its work. I am pioneering an undiscovered country, and I have been from the first. When I began this work, I knew nothing of electrical or mechanical science. My schooling covered little more than a year. If I had not worked under the direction of a supreme intelligence, the work would never have been done at all." When Edison was asked when he first became aware of this intelligence, this infinite intelligence, he responded, "It began when I was a telegraph operator in a lonely mountain town working nights, waiting for a little signal to come to that telegraph so that he could record it and do his job. I became aware of messages coming clearly into my mind as I sat there through the long nights, and I began the work I was directed to do." Now, you have ideas about your future, of possibilities. He says, "I began the work I was directed to do by this infinite intelligence." And how will you know if you're directed to do it? Because your energy will light up. You'll feel more alive. It's what you would love. Your soul force will never lie to you. What you're directed to do is not a task that you go, "Oh, my vision is I've got to go get my degree." Unless you would love to get your degree, that's not your vision. It might be your mother's vision or your father's vision or society's vision, but only if it lights you up. Is it your vision? Is it what you would love? So he says, and I began to do the work I was directed to do. "Why then," he was asked, "have you kept this to yourself?" "Because my work alone was important." Edison replied, "The world would have said Edison is crazy or Edison's got religion." So once the work is done and has been done, what they say afterwards does not matter. And there will be people in your life who have no idea what you're involved in. I would be very careful about who you tell you're going to invent a new future, because even people who love you most, they don't want to see you get disappointed. And they also, when you're in a boat of relationship and one of you stands up, it rocks the boat on the other end, and it can cause the other person to go, well, wait a minute, you move, it's going to move things in my life too. So invent, infinite intelligence, imagination, intuition. All right. I know this world is ruled by infinite intelligence. Everything that surrounds us, everything that exists proves that there are infinite laws behind it. There can be no denying this fact. It is mathematical in its precision. And why that matters is, as we work today with these invisible laws, it's not maybe that they work. Just 100 years ago, if you wanted light after dark, it was going to be a fire or it was going to be an oil lamp. Just 100 years ago in 100,000-year human history. And this guy tapped into an infinite intelligence who said this can happen. And he had no training, 1 year in school. So this is where, when we start to dispel doubt, we're saying it isn't about me. It's about who's breathing me. We don't put our faith in our personality. We put our belief in the power that has brought all of this about, has called you into beingness. That your brain is like your computer, and you surf the net of the infinite, where you look for ideas that give you life, that are, what would I love? That is your most, if you write one thing down today, write that down. What would I love? And say that question to yourself over and over again. When you go to the Google box of the mind, you don't want to be asking, how do I get to the end of the month and pay my bills? The vibration of that question is struggle. I know, because I created struggle over and over and over again, asking that kind of question without having any idea that that question generated a frequency. Oh, Mary wants more struggle. That's what she's interested in. Clearly, that's what she's interested in. And the universe doesn't give us what we say we want. It gives us what we are. And I was vibrating at the rate of struggle. So I was asking very struggling questions into the mind of the infinite. So it was perfectly, and here's the deal. It's a perfect system. When you sit in a movie theater, the movie is the perfect reflection of what's being projected. And so is my life. Circumstances, situations, conditions. So as we study this, and frankly get some good support, so that someone can stand with us, so we listen to them, what you're doing today, and this person knows that no matter what the circumstance is, you are more than that. That the very thing breathing you is more than I don't care. And it doesn't matter how long it's been. And great stories from all traditions, hero stories, and traditional religious stories. Jesus looks at the guy who's been paralyzed for 37 years, and he's not impressed by the problem. He's very impressed by the power breathing that guy. He doesn't ask him, would you like things to be different? Or would you like to try? He doesn't do that. He just simply says, are you willing to be? Would you be healed? So I'm asking you today, would you be an inventor with me? Would you be an inventor of a life you love living? For some of you, you want to think about it. That's okay. Others of you, you know right now, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to invent my future. The end, it is in your nature. It's the most natural thing for you to live a life you love living. It is not the most normal thing, but it is the most natural thing. It's your nature to bring forth what you would love. We shut that down with programs of understanding that come from the world into almost all of us. Unless you were very fortunate to have a parent or an aunt or an uncle or a teacher or someone who had more awareness than the average way most people on planet Earth think and act. Most people live their entire lives, billions of people live and die and never know that it's a reflective reality. Never know that all they had to do was change what was moving through them and coming from them, and their lives would sequentially shift into a whole new pattern. They had no idea. As a little kid, you were imaginative, you could dream up possible futures, and then we sent you to school, and I was trained in that system, and we told you to stop doing that. Stop imagining. Pay attention, sit up. We're going to tell you some things, and you're going to give it back to us. And if you give it back to us exactly the way we give it to you, we're going to reward you with stars and letters and numbers. And then if you get really good at it, we'll give you degrees. And if you pay us even more, then we'll give you more degrees. And it's all reactive learning versus generative learning. See, Edison didn't have that training, but he did have access. He got very quiet for many nights in a row in a lonely little place, and he was working with a telegraph. And he began to realize there were signals coming to him. It's the most natural thing for you to live a life you love living. So right now, if you have any doubt, which is in our, remember our paradigms are like, if you're running a program in your computer, you don't get to use Word if you don't install Office. So if we don't install more liberating operating systems or more operating programs, then the old program is all that we can use. So if the old program is, I'm not enough, or I made a mistake back then, or somebody did something to me and that ruined my life. If my belief is somebody did something to me that ruined my life, or I did something that ruined my life. I talked to a woman this week who something happened 4 years ago, and then something else happened 1 year ago. And this entire year, she has been stuck by that something that happened. I was just so glad that somehow she was able to get to me so that we could unstick that in a very short time. And that's what happens when we do this Dream Builder Live 2-day training, where we come together in a group of people who know something about this, are interested in inventing their futures, and support each other in a 2-day intensive. And boom, 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 people's lives change. I mean, you can feel the popping. You can also see it on the people. There was a woman who came on our trip to Bali who said to me, she said, I came to Dream Builder Live in January, and I stepped into that community of dream builders and people who know something about these laws, are willing to study and come together a couple of times a year for a 2-day intensive and learn more and unpack the potential that's in every one of us, support each other in that. And I went, I want more of this. How do I kind of get in this? And so she ended up signing up for a program and made new friends. Then she came to Bali with us. But see, she invented a new future. She looked around and she saw these people are having more fun. Look, this is, I mean, this whatever this is, I want in my own life. So she took her steps. As I talk to you today, some of this is making sense to you. Some of this is moving through parts of you where you know deep down that there's way more potential in you and for you than you've had an understanding about how to unlock. So you have infinite intelligence. Use your imagination and intuition. I'll tell you more about this in another class. But those are capacities you have. You don't do anything to make infinite intelligence. You're part of it. You use imagination in a constructive way. Most people use their imaginations to terrorize themselves. Oh my gosh, this could happen, this could happen. It's a negative use of a very potent power. Electricity can light your house, it can electrocute you. It's the same power. Use your imagination to invent a future you would love. Your intuition will give you the next step. It's natural. This is where every time your doubt rises up and, well, not, it can happen for her, it can happen for him, but not for me. I've got the same voice. My paradigms talk to me just like yours do. So particularly when I'm ready to make a big leap, that voice will come up and try to send the virus of doubt right through my system. And if I don't know what that is, I don't know how to shut it down. So you can make a date with your doubt. It's natural for you. It is in your nature. It is natural for you to live a life you love living, to be able to invent your future. As I said, it's not the most normal way people live lives. They live lives reactively. When a circumstance changes, then I'll feel better. When my boss does this, when my kids, and always they're sending out into the future, living a life they would love living. So when you're inventing your future exists right now. So you're already moving into the experience of being the man, being the woman who is living the life you're imagining. It's natural. This is in your nature to be able to do this. It involves your self-image. It involves who you think you are. It involves whether you think you have a success identity or not, and we can change that. All of that is like Play-Doh. I don't care what you thought about yourself. I don't care how long it's been. I really don't. I'm not interested. I'm very interested in who's breathing you. I'm very interested that you care enough to do some personal development today. You care enough to take some ideas down, to recognize that you keep breathing another 365 days, you are going to have a life. Let's create a life that you love. Because as you live a life you love, you give greater blessings by your beingness. Howard Thurman, the mystic mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., there's a great quote by him where he says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. All right. You have an I am nature. You've been given a holy name. Every one of us. You can't even say I am anything, except the power of that infinite life rises up into you, becomes self-aware, and proclaims itself, I am. And then we lay that I am power on the altar of all manner of limitation. I am a struggling person. I am not enough. I am. And we just lay that power on what was programmed into us until we become aware. And then we practice, and then we study, and then we hang out with people who are doing the same thing. So I'm going to fire through this just a little bit. I think I said earlier that I lived years and years of struggle. I dreamed of being a teacher. I had circumstances in my life, getting pregnant in high school and getting kicked out of high school and believing that I was needing to be punished because of that, and struggled, and then came upon these teachings. And even after I found the teachings, I found some of these books and began to read and study, and studied. I mean, even for like a decade, I was still producing struggle I was happier. I was certainly more aware, but I didn't know how to translate that into money, and I didn't know how to translate that into doing my creative work in a way that was sustainable. I was struggling. Then I met this man, Jack Bowen, and his life. He was living a life where he was free. He studied the same thing I studied, but his results were way different. I begged him. I went to a conference, and I heard about what he was doing, and I heard him, and I went, I want what you're having. I want to know what you know. He said, I can help you with that, but it will cost you. And literally, my body moved back, and I said, how much? And he said, wrong question. How much is it costing you not to? Now, just so you know, at the end of this, I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm going to give you something. But he offered me the chance to study with him, and it was a significant amount of money to me at the time, more money than I thought I could do. But he helped me see how I could take a step. And he died, my mentor, Jack Bowen, I worked with from 1987 to 1992. He died in 92, and there is almost not a day that goes by that I don't hear him somewhere in me, in my awareness. He was so solid in these teachings. He helped me so many ways. There was the last time I saw him before, just a few days before he died. It was January of 92. He died in March. He died on March 4th, which we always, those of us who loved him always said that was his last message to all of us. March 4th, go forth. And he'd flown to Portland, Oregon, and by then, because of his help with me and my willingness to do the thing, he would say, I can help you, but I can't help you your way. I can help you the way it works. And I would argue about why I needed to be doing it. He said, go ahead. What you're doing produces those results. You want to keep producing those results? Keep doing that. And he didn't have an attachment to me having more success. He just was solid in this is how it works. It's the same thing with electricity. It works its way. It doesn't work my way. It doesn't work your way. It works its way. So he was showing me how to create the success I wanted, how to invent my work in the world, how to invent my life in the world. And I told him when he came out to Portland, I knew he was dying, and he did too, but he came anyway, and he was going to speak that night for us. And we had breakfast, and he said, so what's your vision this year? And I said, well, this year, I said, Jack, the church I was serving, he said, we have a vision for our permanent home. We've written a vision. This year, we found a piece of land. We're going to raise some money and then have a 3-year fundraising project, and we will buy this piece of land. It's $3 million, and then we'll have enough equity where we can build our first building. And then, and I said, so just imagine 10 years from now, there's going to be a global campus. There's going to be statues of holy people and of all the different traditions. There's going to be, because represent all the world's faiths, and the great philosophers, and Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and naming all of these, and Edison and Ford and Firestone and Emerson and Thoreau, and Kids Center and the kitchen that feeds 400, and I'm sharing the vision with him. And he looked at me and he said, so why would you squeeze the infinite into a 10-year plan? Why don't you get the building this year? I laughed at him. I said, well, because this is a $10 million dream, and we have $40,000 in the building fund. So what am I saying? I believe in the power of conditions. It's a $10 million dream, and we have $40,000 in the building fund. And he looked at me 6 weeks before he died. He looked at me with these, it was this penetrating gaze, as if, and he didn't say these words, but I felt it. Have I not taught you anything? He said, Mary, why would you squeeze the infinite into a 10-year plan? It could, that's just one way it could happen. 10-year plan, okay, that's one idea. Stay open. There are ways you have no idea of. Stay clear about what you're producing. Be in love with what you're bringing forth, but open to ways that you can't possibly know. I know you've got business people advising you, and that is a very sequential business way to bring something about. And by the way, it takes a long time. It takes 10 years. What if you could have the building this year? I said, well, Jack, and he said, do you believe you could have the building this year? I said, no, not really. $10 million, $40,000. And I believe more in that at that point. This is 1992. He looked at me, just boom, he said, then believe in my belief. And I hugged him goodbye, and I went out, and he spoke that night, and the next time I saw him was in the hospital just before he died. And we did a living memorial for him at his church, and he came in the wheelchair, and it was Wayne Dyer and Les Brown and I conducted that. Jack only mentored 3 people, Wayne Dyer, Les Brown, and me. And will forever be grateful for that man's influence in my life. But as it turned out, we did not move into that building 10 years later. We held our first service in that building. It was a project to get it revamped, but nevertheless, we held our first service in that building 10 months later. I knew when I walked out of that breakfast that I was a changed woman, not because I had any answers, but I knew that I had had a closed mind. Some of you came today, you might be you might have come today feeling like, oh, I'll listen to this, but I'm not sure it's really going to work. Somebody else is watching right now, and you're the person who went, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to take on these steps. I'm going to do it. So whether you're the person who, let's see what this is going to be, or you're the person who said, I'm really ready, I'm encouraging you right now. There are ways for you to invent your future that you have no idea of. But you cannot invent something you don't have a very clear picture of in your mind. So that's our step. This has taken me all over the world. Those willingness, Dalai Lama, speaking at the UN, Nelson Mandela, things I've dreamed. Let's dream your dream. Let's invent your future. In Concord, Massachusetts, where Henry David Thoreau spent some time, and then he would write his wonderful essay called Walden. If one advances confidently in the direction of their dream, endeavoring to live the life they are imagining, one passes an invisible boundary, and all sorts of things begin to occur that never otherwise would have occurred. One meets with a success unexpected in common hours and lives with the license of a higher order of being. He says, I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately. Now, he wasn't a hermit. He just spent time looking at nature to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what I had, and to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, not when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. So let's not, when we die, discover that we haven't really lived the life we would love living. You have the capacity. You may not know it, but I do. And there's more and more and more people who do, who are happy to be with you and support you, hang out with you. That's what we do day after day after day. I am so grateful for the work that we get to do. I'm grateful that we have technology today where wherever in the world you are, we can hang out for an hour together. It used to take a lot more to be able to just spend an hour together. So your dream, let's get you going. So we've got infinite intelligence with imagination and intuition. It's in your nature. It's going to require that you do some visioning because nothing happens without a vision. So Edison says, I shall discover and deliver for the world a system of illumination that will eliminate our requirement on oil lamp. He has no idea how to do it. Don't let the how stop you from your visioning. When how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? That's your paradigm talking to you. It's like a rubber band to the life you've been living. And there's a huge gravitational pull to that life. I know this as much as I know that I'm breathing right now, because you have a part of you that wants to expand and a part of you that wants to contract. Wants to stay safe, wants to have measured steps and live incrementally pretty much the same life over and over and over again. Some people actually live 90 years. Way more people live 1 year 90 times. So this is now where you vision what you want to invent in health, in relationships, in your vocation, your creative endeavors, and in your time and money freedom. So real quickly, there's a woman that worked for the city of Portland who came to one of my 2-day trainings, came up with a dream that she had no idea how to do. She loved growing fragrant flowers. She was working for the city of Portland. She had benefits, and she was convinced that she would do that for 30 years and then do what she loved. And through the process of that, we'll go back for just a second. Through the process of doing the things we're talking about, she invented a new life. She left the city of Portland. She invented, with her husband, Ferguson's Fragrant Nursery. She loved growing big baskets of fragrant flowers. She wanted to create gardens where people could come and visit. She's been in Sunset Magazine. I mean, she built this in the 90s, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And this is Ferguson's Fragrant Nursery. I got a phone call from Danny and Jeff Ferguson. This was dream building. This was inventing a future rather than waiting 30 years for the benefits, which when she first came to the training, she was really convinced her paradigm had her by the throat. She could not live a life she loved living. She had to get the benefits. And her father had very much drilled that into her, that this was smart living. And we kept talking about what would you love? What would you love? And when in your life are you most alive? Well, when I'm growing those flowers in the spring, when I make those baskets for my mother and sister, and I always look for some leaders, women leaders, and I give them. What if you could do more of that? You know? And before 3 days was up, she'd invented with her husband that they could really create something called Ferguson's Fragrant Nursery. And everything that they had to go through to be willing to allow this much good in their lives. And Danny and Jeff raised their kids there. I did their daughter's wedding on this beautiful property about 2 years ago now, in January. I live in California now. I'm remarried, have a wonderful life here. My adult kids live here, grandkids live here. About 2 years ago, I received a phone call from Danny, January, and she's crying. And I said, Danny, what's going on? And she could hardly get the words out, but she said, Mary, I woke up this morning, and Jeff didn't. 47 years old, I think, or 52, but right in there. And he just had died during the night. And she was brokenhearted that the man she'd loved since she was 17 years old and father of her 2 kids, he was gone. And she said, would you come and do his service? And I said, of course I'll come and do his service. So I flew to Portland. Before we went, as a minister, and I'm no longer a minister, but I was a former minister, and I still, friends and family I still do services for. Before we went out to conduct the service, Dan took me by the hands, and she just looked me in the eye with tears streaming down her face. She said, thank you. And I know I had a questioning look on my face, and she said, if it hadn't been for you, I would still be working at the city of Portland waiting for my benefits, and then Jeff and I were going to do the things we wanted to do. Instead, we've had 15 years being by each other's side all day long. Our kids, after school and in summers, got to know their dad, got to work with us, got to learn what business is like and helping other people enjoy the flowers and talk about benefits. I would have traded all those benefits for little benefits and missed all of this life. It was one of the most gratifying things anyone ever said to me, and I realized in a deeper way, all of us think we're just going to have all this time. You know, we have an invisible date with our destiny. This is a temporary assignment at best, and not very long in infinity. Your future, your inventing your future, is life itself. So I would really deeply encourage you to pay attention to the life that's in you, that wants to live, that wants to express, that wants to give. Because in the absence of that, if you suppress that life, you can't suppress the energy from expressing. You can either give it a form and give it more life, or you push it down, suppress it, and then it has to symptomize. And it'll form some sort of symptom in your life. It'll start out as discontent, it'll turn to unhappiness, and ultimately it will be some form of dis-ease in your finances or your health or your relationships. It has to express. Life is more powerful than your ego or my ego. We have a capacity not to live by default, but to live by design, inventing your future. Your E is the emotion. You're holding, you're imagining, and you realize it's in your nature. You're dispelling your doubt through the practice of realizing that your faith isn't in your personality. You're believing in the invisible laws that govern how things evolve. And you're working more and more in harmony with that. You're visioning. You have a clear vision. When you get in your car, if you don't have a vision, even roads going everywhere in a great car won't take you there. You have to know you want to get to the grocery store or down to grandma's house or wherever it is. You're always, but most of us choose little tiny visions. We choose little sequential patterns. Not now and not you. That's why you came today. Danny dreamed a dream she'd never let herself dream before. Felicia Searcy, I met Felicia probably 3 years ago. And she lived a life where for a number of years, 15 years in a row, she'd made about $50,000 a year. She had a good life. The great thing about inventing your future is you don't have to have a bad life for it to get all better. You know, it can be a great life and become way massively more expansive and fun. And she came, we met, I was speaking at an event where she was. We had a cup of tea outside, we talked, and I could feel in her life was just wanting to express. And I began to suggest some things to her, and she's, well, and then Felicia took a step. She came to a training. And all I will say to you is that I've watched her time and time and time again, and I could tell you about Tony, and I could tell you about Mark, and I could tell you all kinds of people for whom the same thing, where they took the step they could take. They did vision. They got clear. They recognized they were part of something. They understood it was in their nature. They dialed down the doubt, and they dialed up the confidence, not in their personal selves, but in their confidence that there are invisible laws that govern all things. I'm part of something. I didn't create myself. I can't even breathe myself. And I get one day at a time, a lifetime in miniature, to create a great day, to be the person I want to be today, with a direction I'm heading in and a future I'm forming by working with inventing my future. In a relatively short time, Felicia changed. So much of her life changed in ways that she loved changing. She released what was lesser. She brought in what was greater. The last time I spoke to her, which was maybe a week ago, the last 12 months, she had generated $275,000. Now, could Felicia have done that before? Always. The capacity, the 9 years I spent struggling economically, could I have done something differently? I could have, but I didn't have the structure of support until I went looking for Jack Boland. I had books I read and tapes I listened to and events I attended, but I didn't have the support to really create a structure where I could unleash the power that was in me in very sequential ways. So you're going to run an emotion, doubt, fear. You might use your imagination to terrorize yourself. You're going to run an emotion. Decide, I'm going to run the energy of enthusiasm. And I'm going to run the energy, the emotion, the electrons. You're emitting a magnetic field. Every atom has a neutron, a proton, and an electron. It binds matter. That's how molecules form. And it's a vibration. If I take this white piece of paper and I put iron filings on that white piece of paper and I hold a magnet underneath that paper, these iron filings will move into a pattern which is a visible pattern of an invisible field of this magnet. Now, I can't see the magnetic field, but that doesn't make it not there. If I electrically charge that magnet, they move immediately and quickly into that pattern. Your emotion is how you electrically charge the magnetic field of your vision. So you cannot be thinking, how am I going to get to the end of the month to pay my bills and have prosperity? Because you're on a vibration of lack. And it's interesting why the support matters is that, so keep coming to these calls. Why it matters is that it's so tempting to believe in the power of circumstance versus the power of living with, holding to, and vibrating with your vision. Circumstances they are plastic to the power breathing you. They will just rearrange themselves, but not just in a flash. You have to hold that new frequency sequentially enough and vibrate with it. And think that's where we say, oh my gosh, you won't believe what happened. Out of the blue, it came. I got this phone call, and it looks like it's just like it's luck or something just happening. You literally made it welcome by the vibration you're in. And your paradigms cannot argue with results. So let's create some results for you, different ones. Einstein said everything is energy, that's all there is. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. So we have emotion, energy. Your paradigms can't argue. And another writer that I love said your constant observation should be the state of consciousness of you being successful. How did that feel? Live the experiences over and over again of I'm successful in this future I'm inventing. Thomas Edison, over and over and over again, he got a lot of feedback in what some people call failure after failure after failure after failure. He said, no, I found 10,000 ways it didn't work. I would never have found the way it did. I wasn't willing to do that. So you can feel it, know it. You're going to five sense yourself. You're imagining this, you're visioning this. What would it be like? Start to imagine that, live in that, run some enthusiasm around that. You're going to plan success. You're going to say, I'm so happy and grateful now that my life is. You're inventing a future. And the end is for newness, the green growing edges of our own becoming. So we're going to allow ourselves, what is required for new results? You're going to make friends with your doubt simply by saying, I hear you. You can actually, another thing you can do is literally make a date with your doubt, but then letting it go to bed with you and eat dinner with you and drive in the car with you. Give it an appointment Fridays at 3 p.m. or something like that. And say, I'll sit down and I'll listen to everything you have to say at that time. And that's where you're down. Well, what if this and what if that and what if, and you say, the power that's breathing me in, I'll handle that. But I am not willing to live a little sequestered life on the possibility that something might not work. I'm going to live in the full, this is what Thoreau's saying. I didn't want to find on my deathbed that I hadn't even lived. So successful people are willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of growth. They don't want to be uncomfortable just for being uncomfortable, but in the interest of growth, okay? And this becomes your new normal, a life that's more fun, more alive making, more free. That becomes your new normal. When I look into Felicia's eyes or Tony's or Mark's, and I could name hundreds and hundreds of names, Danny Ferguson. And that life unleashed is the most beautiful thing there is. You think about a flower in full bloom, your soul in full bloom, and it will bloom in a way nobody else's. There's no duplicates in nature. So your expression of this life and what you really love, right into existence, loving it right into existence. And the T is to celebrate tiny victories. I am a big believer in baby steps and tiny victories. Most people wait until the final deal to have the feeling of I'm making progress. If you will, even if you got out of bed today, you can feel good about yourself. Most people have been trained to feel bad about themselves most of the time. That bad feeling about ourselves really creates a vibration that generates little tiny living and lack existence. So you can train yourself to pay attention to and give yourself repetitive daily little wins, little victories. So you celebrate little wins. You know, even something, gratitude, by the way, is the frequency that's harmonious with abundance. So when we're celebrating little wins, that I wanted to walk mindfully through the grocery store today. You make a decision, I'm going to stay present, I'm going to bless every person in that grocery store that I walk by. They've got lives, they've got interests, they've got dreams. I do this all the time. I'm not going to, most of those people I will not ever get to talk to. Most of them I may never even see again. But there is a vibration, there's an energy field that goes forth from every one of us. So as I'm passing, I'm sending them a blessing to that life inside of them that's seeking expression. And that there's and to just hold the energy that they will become both aware of and make a decision for that life. So I want to just say, what is failure is actually feedback. So we'll go back to what is failure. When Edison said, I didn't have 10,000 failures in the light bulb, in the system of illumination, I found 9,999 ways it didn't work. Every one of those was learning. It was all feedback to bringing into existence what did work. Not everything at first for Danny Ferguson worked out in that nursery, but you saw what it looked like. They lived that wonderful life. Not everything that you think of will work out exactly the way you think. But when you're living a life you love and leaning into that life you love, even as you're getting feedback, you hold it in that space of this is what it looks like to learn. You were willing to be wobbly on a bike so you could learn what balance was like. You were willing to be wobbly on your little legs. You took those first steps because you looked around and other people had become walkers and you wanted to become a walker too. Look around. There are people who have become free and you want to become free too. So I told you I would give you a gift and I want to give you that gift now. So get out, make sure you have your pen and paper. So Michelle, if you'll help us go to the page where we can give the gift. I mentioned to you earlier in our video broadcast today, Lily, I hear your question, and I'd be happy to tell you that it's a longer story. I actually wrote a book about it, so I would be happy to share that with you. You can write me, Mary at Mary Morrissey. So there was a sequence, but here's the deal, Lily. It isn't about getting the $10 million building, although it is. It's about understanding how you invent a future. And that's what we're doing here today. Take that INVENT, tiny victories. Take visioning, take infinite intelligence, that as you recognize it's in your nature, right? Visioning, so you have a very clear idea of what you would love in the areas where you're going to create a life anyway. Energy, what if you run generally the energy of gratitude and enthusiasm, you're at a higher frequency, that you're bringing newness into your life. You're willing to explore. You're willing to be uncomfortable in the interest of growth, not just for being uncomfortable, but in the interest of growth. And that you have this new practice of celebrating tiny victories. Even you made the egg and you turned it over and it didn't break if you didn't want it to break, or you wanted it to be hard and you got it hard. Little victories. You ironed the shirt and it was wrinkly and now it's straight or it's pressed. Little victories. What happens is you're on a higher frequency with your thinking. You actually can hear from the infinite side of your nature in a new way. So Michelle, can we switch over now to the, or is it, do I need to fast? I'm gonna let you fast. I'm gonna let you take care of the, here we go. All right. So here's our invitation to you. I mentioned to you that twice a year I do my public events. I do other events during the year, but they're not public events that my company and I produce. So I'm inviting you to come and be with me in person, and I'll give you 2 days of training. I'll take you into a deep dive in everything, and Michelle, there's nothing on my PowerPoint that I can see, so maybe other people can see it, but I can't see it. I'm hearing others say they can't see it either. So let me just tell you what it is. Let's not worry about the PowerPoint right now. Let me tell you what it is. I'm offering you an opportunity to be in our live event with me in person with my whole team. I have an amazing team. We do a 2-day live event twice a year in Los Angeles at the Marriott Hotel right by the airport, easy to get to. You'll be in a room where people have paid $1,495 to come to the training. It's worth every penny of that and more. You actually can't put a price on it. As I mentioned, we spend the first part of the weekend blueprinting our future, We spend the second part of the weekend learning how to bridge from the life you've lived to the life you would love living. And we spend the last part of the weekend learning the very sequential ways in which you build the life you are imagining, the future you're inventing. So literally, to answer your question, come to these 2 days and I will give you everything I've got in 2 days, and you will see this pattern in another whole way. And you'll see it better by two means, one of which is we'll go through the whole process. It's a deep dive. It's an immersion process of 2 full days. And you're in a room of other people who are supportive, who are at varying levels of understanding, but all came for the same purpose. You're in a Dream Builder community. And we have a lot of fun, by the way. It's deep, powerful, and fun. And so we're not going to invite you to pay $1,495. You came today as a friend and a family member of this work. And so we're going to offer it to you for the friends and family price, which is $117. So that just barely covers our cost of renting the room and bringing the staff. It doesn't even cover the cost of bringing the staff to the room. So it covers the cost. We rent a big hotel room. We've got support there from the hotel. And that's what it costs us to put it on. So we're giving you everything we've got. It's a gift to you. And it's June 1 and 2. So I'm going to get you right now to say to yourself, what could be more important than inventing my future? And all I need to do is get myself to LA and be in that room for 2 days. You be in the lobby at 8 a.m. on Saturday, and we finish at 6 p.m. on Sunday. And Saturday night is a free night. We go from 9 to 6 each, or 8 to 6 each day. And you will leave that seminar crystal clear with a blueprint for your future. Crystal clear about the 3 steps that move you to a new vibration. Crystal clear about how you build that future right into the land of time and space. And it will not just be my knowing now, it will be yours. And you will meet new friends. Some of these friends will become your best friends for your entire life. Richard Bach years ago in his book said, our true family rarely comes from one of bone and blood. But our true family are those souls that we meet along our journey who know where they're going, lend us a hand, and walk with us as we travel. So again, I don't see it on the PowerPoint right now, but if you go to, and Michelle, I'm going to get you to come on, or Matt, one of you tell me, if you're not seeing the webpage, use this link. It's on the left underneath my video. DreamBuilderLive.com, invent your future. That will take you to the friends. Don't go to DreamBuilderLive.com because you'll pay $1,495 there. Go to this one. Go to the one back up there where she says it's www.DreamBuilderLive.com/invent your future. DreamBuilderLive, DreamBuilderLive.com, invent your future.com/invent your future. Okay? And that's how you'll be able to come as a friend and family member. This is a gift to you. I'm giving you 2 days of deep training, bringing my whole team to support you. We love seeing those results in you. I love seeing what happened for Danny or Felicia or Tony or Mark or Robert, or on and on and on. Every one of us. You think of Danny saying thank you. We want you to have the opportunity to be saying to yourself, thank you. Thank you for whatever it took to get that. I did what it took to get in that room, and I made a commitment. I'm going to live a life I love living. I'm going to invent my future. DreamBuilderLive.com/invent your future. I'm giving you a ticket, just a friend and family. So I hope to see you June 1 and 2, and I will tell you that this is selling out right now. In fact, this morning when I got the notice about how many people have already signed up, this will sell out. So don't go think about it. If you feel called right now, go sign up right now. It's $117. You can do that. You can, and we'll take care of everything else. All right. All right. Feel a big hug from me. And those of you that wrote something, once we turn off this webinar, I don't get to see everything that's written, and I was busy teaching, so I may not have seen your comments. If it's something you want me to know, you feel free to always write me, Mary@MaryMorrissey.com. Let's not just talk about inventing your future. Let's invent your future. Have a great day. Bye-bye.